we are talking about mental health tips for families and children during COVID-19. We have Lori Price with us from Pulaski County Schools. If you're not familiar with Kentucky SPIN stands for Parent or Special Parent Involvement Network, and we are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Kentucky. We're funded by the U.S. Department of Education under IDEA since 1988, when Kentucky first received a PTI. Kentucky SPIN Parent Center provides training, information, and support for children and youth with all types of disabilities, birth through 26 years old, their parents, families, and professionals. We do not act as attorneys, but what we do is empower families to effectively advocate for their children. We also provide peer support to families to help them access needed information and resources. This is a quote from our director, Rhonda, and she says, "Together we can accomplish great things for our children. None of us have all the answers, so we're working through this pandemic and adjusting as we go." So, Lori, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And I am going to hand this over to you. But before I do, I just want everyone to know on the right side of your screen, you have your dashboard. There's a handouts in your dashboard where you can download and print the resources that are shared with you today. Or if you don't have time or you don't want to do that right now, those will all be emailed to you later. If you have any questions, there's a questions box and a chat box that we'll be monitoring throughout the presentation. So you can just type your questions or comments in either one of those, and we'll break periodically for those. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a minute, and let's see, give this to Lori so she can get started with the presentation. There we go.
Okay. Are we on? Good to
We're
go.
on. Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. And I'm going to apologize. I've never used GoToWebinar before. So I apologize ahead of time if we have a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to do the best we can given the circumstances that we're in. And that's my new motto, has been since March. So let me introduce myself. My name is Lori Price, and I work in Pulaski County Schools, worked there for years, over 20 years in Pulaski County Schools. And my role there is I pretty much work in all or oversee all the programs in our school district that remove non-academic barriers to learning. And so you're saying, well, what are those? Well, issues such as mental health struggles, issues such as neglect struggles or poverty, any of those types of issues that come with a student to school and may impact their ability to learn. That is my role in our district. So I work really closely with all of our guidance counselors, our family resource and youth service centers, and any of our mental health people that we have in our school systems that provide support to our students. And so today, I also want to say I am personally a clinician and have a practice in Somerset where I see a lot of our teenagers, a lot of our young adults. And so even there, I'm seeing the impact of COVID-19. And so today when I talk to you, I want to let you know that I'm coming from both of those perspectives, the school system perspective and then the outpatient world, what we're seeing in the community. So today I just want to talk to you about what we're seeing, what I recognize that kids are experiencing, and then talk to you about some tips as parents and maybe school staff. We may have some school people on here today. What could help, especially when we're thinking about learning from home. So I just want to briefly talk about the types of stressors that we have noticed. You know, and I think back in March when our superintendent called us into a meeting and said, go home, work from home. You know, we are looking at a pandemic. And the response that I had to that, you know, and I've got some big questions down here. What is going on? I just remember being shocked about that and how all of a sudden My structure in life changed, my schedule in life changed, and as an adult, how odd that was for me and what a transition it was. So what we see for students, and we've been seeing since March, is literally disruption to their routines in general. The disruption of getting up every day and coming to school, the disruption of getting to see my friends, the disruption of I can't participate in things anymore, even in the community. Churches, went to closed status. So even youth groups, being able to participate in a youth group, being able to participate in clubs. So many things were just totally disrupted to children, things that they were used to. And then on top of that, children were sent home. And so we're seeing the stressors on the children, but then we begin to see the stressors on the families. Who's going to watch my kids while I'm at work? Am I going to be even able to work? And if I can't work, what does that do to my, my income for my children and my family? How am I going to get my kids learning? I don't know anything about higher math. How can I help them? How can I be a teacher? What do I do when I can't get my child to sit down and do their homework? All of these virtual learning, the schedules at home, having to be with each other all the time. We love our families, but it's really good when we have breaks from our families where we can go to work or we can go to school. So being with each other every day. The role changes within the family. Not only are you a parent now, but you're a teacher. But even on top of that, many of our high school kids became the babysitter and teachers for their children, for their siblings, while parents are at home or at work during the daytime. So there's just been a lot of disruption to not only the child's world, but to the family world, and how the family roles just changed and got interrupted. We also look at society, and I wanted to put that in there because our lives have changed, to go out and have to wear a mask, to maintain 6-foot distance, for kids to be coming back to school and having to maintain 6-foot distance and wear masks, not being able to sit with each other in the lunchroom. That has greatly impacted all of us. We've really had to establish new habits and new routines. I will say, as we have started kids back to school, it's interesting that our students are pretty much into that routine of that. And so that's not been as difficult at the school level, getting them to do the mask and the 6-foot distancing. But also what we saw is this just complete disruption into our social world and on the media of safety. And all of a sudden seeing, ambulances and hospitals and talk of hospitals being full and all the people being sick. And even though I appreciated Governor Beshear by, every day giving us updates, that is stressful to children who are looking at, is my world safe? Am I going to be healthy? What are my parents? Are they going to be healthy? Just that fear, that general fear. And then underlying it all is a lot of governmental pressures, different looting and all that kind of, the changes in the government. And that's been a lot on. And I want to say those things add to the stress level of our students. They see it not only from you, but they see it from social media, and that increases the stress. So, I put in here, it just seems like we've got these questions of, oh my gosh, what's going on in my world? Is it ever going to stop? And how can I survive in it? How can I get through to the other end? And what is it going to take? And so those are a lot of the questions that our youth are just playing through their head. So when we start to think about this, I want to talk about, to you just briefly, we know that we are seeing increases in both anxiety and depression among our children and adolescents. Social and emotional development are being negatively impacted. And you may say, well, what do you even mean by all those things? When we look at anxiety, we're looking at just a general feared stressor response that goes on for a period of time. And the interesting thing about anxiety is that it impacts physically. You will see a lot of physical impacts, students complaining of their stomachs hurting, maybe being nervous, feeling like their heart beats quicker. Anxiety really shows up physically amongst our children. And so you may have a child that's suffering with stomach issues. And I will say in my practice, that has been something that has routinely been discussed. Stomach pain, nausea, vomiting, and it falls back on, and I want to say, always have your child checked out, but when a doctor says there's nothing physically wrong, then we need to start to look at stress level. Also, depression. Depression is, and I just always say, when we think about depression in our children, we always ask our question, are you distinctly seeing a change in your child's behavior? Because children express depression differently. Some kids shut down. Some of them don't want to come out of their room anymore. Some of them don't want to complete their schoolwork. Some of them just have no energy or routine. And in the most difficult situations, children can become suicidal or homicidal. And so that is a very severe form of depression. But then also, kids on the other way of depression, many kids can become argumentative, angry, maybe more behaviorally impacted, where they're just not going to do what's expected of them. And so you have a very different type of change. I just say, look for change when a child is suffering from depression. If you see a change in your child, start asking questions. Do I need to reach out for support? What's going on? Have that conversation with your child. How are you feeling? What's your body feeling like? How are you feeling emotionally? What kind of thoughts are going through your head? What are you struggling with? And then when we talk about emotional and social development, we're literally talking about a child being able to develop a healthy self-esteem, that they can be a survivor in no matter what situation, being empowered, being healthy emotionally, and being able to interact and develop friendships and relationships with others and maintain those. We know that when we're not in school, there is limited social interaction, and that is important in the development of our youth. I know I've heard parents say, oh, my child suffers with social anxiety, or they don't like to go to school. Being at home and virtual learning is so good for them. Well, I want to ask that question to you. Is that really good for them? Is that where they're going to get used to being? And what happens when all this is over with? Are they going to be comfortable with getting back out in the world? So I'm just challenging you with that thought today. Being at home virtually does stifle the development of our children. And so I just want to kind of give you some ideas of what we're seeing overall, some maybe increases in different age groups. When we look at young children aged 3 to 6 years of age, you often see clinginess, a child that is afraid to leave their parent. Maybe they, don't want to go back to school because they've been home for so long. And so you've got the child that when you drive up, they don't want to get out of the car, or just being afraid to sleep at night by themselves, wanting to be near their parents. And this can be called separation anxiety in its most severe form. And so we're seeing a lot of that with our younger children. Fear of family members getting infected. And I actually hear more from younger children the fear of, my parent getting sick or my grandparent getting sick rather than them, because we know they're less likely to be impacted at a severe degree. And so we hear a lot of that worrying. I don't want my mom to get it at work, or I don't want my dad to bring it home. We also notice that children are more irritable and they're suffering with lack of attention. It's hard to maintain attention at home when we're schooling because there's so many other things around us. We're used to being at home, getting to play maybe games, or getting to ride our bike, or getting to, watch TV. There's a lot of things that are, really disrupt when we're at home. Kids tend to have a lot of uncertainty. You may see a lot of fear, disturbed sleep. I've heard a lot of students that are suffering from nightmares, just general fears, because of what they're seeing on television and their fears. When I said poor appetite on younger children, again, ensure that there's not a physical health issue. And if not, then we may be seeing some stress that's related to poor appetite. They're a fear to eat because when they eat, they don't feel good. So with the older students, we're seeing, again, I talked about that change with depression. We're seeing a real variety, anywhere from students that are real uncertain and fearful and afraid to get out and about and just afraid to re-engage in school. But then we have students that's gotten home and they've shut down. They've gone to their bedroom. They've gone to, they want to stay in their room. They sleep. They don't follow the schedule. They're staying up at all hours of the night and sleeping all day long. Parents want them to engage with them and they don't want to. So you have a lot of that withdrawal, the withdrawal that's coming out. And then what you see is a parent tries to engage them. You have a lot more of argumentativeness. You have a lot more irritability. They don't want their parent to be engaged in their life, and they don't want their parent to be engaged all the time in their life. So, you know, you see that with some students, yet with others, you've got the more dependency, you've got that more, I need my parent around, that more interaction or that uncertainty that's feeding fear. So it's very different with your older children. It's interesting, I've had a lot of parents tell me that their children have started hoarding things, and even odd things, you know, even if it's just collectible things or if it's hoarding food. And so you may see some of that. And when you start to see the increase in hoarding, hoarding is merely an anxiety issue. It's an anxiety symptom. And so your child's telling you that they, in a sense, need to be busy, but they're also creating some level of safety in their life by putting things around them and being in control of their environment. You may also see a lot of picking with children and picking at their nails, picking at their hair, picking at sores. That is anxiety related. With youth being at home, we're seeing an increased use of internet and social media. And all I'm going to say there is be careful, you know, monitor that, because there's good things on social media and then there's very negative, harmful things on social media.
Lori,
Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's
So
good.
while you're on this topic, we had a couple of questions. And so this person says, so being argumentative can possibly be a sign of depression. And what about bedwetting?
Okay, so argumentativeness at the extreme can be a sign of mild depression. Okay, so there's a difference here. I want to say in the clinical world, in order for you to be clinically depressed, there's many more things besides just argumentativeness that has to take that into account. But I want to say, when we're looking at the mental health impact at home, any change we need to be responsive to, you know, argumentativeness, sitting them down, having that conversation. You know, we seem to not be able to communicate here. What's going on? Talking to them about it and then monitoring it. Just remember, your children are transitioning through this too. So don't overreact, but then react in the sense that have that open conversation. What's going on? So yes, any type of irritability or argumentativeness, again, change in your child's behavior can be a form of depressive symptoms or anxiety. Okay, that doesn't mean that they could meet the diagnosis or the criteria diagnostics for anxiety or depression, but we're saying that we've got to change, and we've got to change in emotional functioning, and we need to assist them in handling that. Yes. I want to say too, with special needs, and I appreciate you, I'm not paying attention very well to the question, so let me know when there's a question. I want to say, I want to briefly mention special needs children. And special needs children are doubly structure-oriented children. And so any disruption in the routine, you know, can lead to anger outbursts, conflict, just, you know, an inability to adapt to those expectations. Now, if you get them home, and we're going to talk about tips, then you can recreate that structure and help them feel safe again and reduce those types of things. So I just want to throw out the question really quick, and obviously somebody's seeing argumentativeness in their children. What are some things that you're seeing with your children Is there anything that I've not got on here that you are particularly seeing in your children? I'll give you a few minutes to respond.
I was watching for responses.
Okay, so just there we go, lack of motivation. Yes. And with the lack of motivation, and this is me talking about my outpatient world, that has been for new clients that I have started seeing since the COVID began. That has been probably the #1 facilitator or reason for seeking out counseling for their children. Parents have brought, and these are usually middle school to high school age children. They have, the ones that I've seen new, it's parents saying, I'm really concerned. My child has no motivation. They just want to lay in bed or they want to stay on their phone. I can't get them up to do their schoolwork. I remind them. And then even I can't get them to do home chores. And so, yes, lack of motivation. And you want to look at that as a type of withdrawal. And so, again, we're going to talk about some tips to encourage the motivation and to get the children back up going. So I'm going to move on. And if you have more, please share so that we can all see that, okay? So when we start to think about COVID-19 mental health tips, or, you know, you may have a little catchphrase for it. I call it the Rona, you know, Rona mental health tips. I just want to give you a couple of websites where school people pull a lot of information from, but also they have a lot of information for families and how to structure the home during virtual learning and how to respond to mental health concerns for children. And so I've shared with you the www.pbis.org, and also locally, the Southeastern South Central Co-op that our school district, Pulaski County Schools, is a part of. They have a really good page that has a lot of tips. I'm going to share one of those tips in just a minute with you. But with that, I want to say, as a parent, and these are big shoes to fill, but there you are, you're parents. And as a parent, you are going to set the tone of your home, and how you cope in times of stress and transition will reflect or will impact how your children handle stress, anxiety, times of change, transition. And so I want you to think about that just a minute. If you are a parent yourself who's been very nervous about these situations, who maybe has seen some change in your own personal behavior or your own emotional functioning, could you be increasing the stress or the changes in your children's behavior just by the example that you give? When we have stressful times in the school system, I always remind our school staff, I'll say, teachers, you are the example for your classroom. If you are strong and you show healthy coping to your students, they are going to follow your example. And I'm saying the same thing to you as parents. So again, that is a big chore to take up, but you are the responsible adult and you're the parent who's responsible for encouraging that security and safety. And so I want to say, children need consistency. And so when they're on a school routine, they come to school, and I know many of you see, you know, we've got a schedule. The bell's going to ring at this time. You're going to have breakfast at this time. At elementary age, they're going to open up and do their little songs or their little daily openers. They're going to start reading at a certain time and their math at a certain time, and they're going to have PE at a certain time. You see that at the high school level, you know, my first class, my first period, you know, and so there's a defined schedule throughout the day. And throughout the day in our schools, we're a positive behavioral.
Attention Kmart shoppers.
Nope.
For anyone interested.
Sorry.
There's leftover chili.
I had my phone on, so Kmart shopper. Something's going on here. We've got something up in the, I'm sorry about that disruption. But anyway, so let me get myself back onto it. So we have structures that we follow every day, but also in our buildings, we have reminders of the expectations and the rules that we have. You know, walk down the right-hand side of the hallway, the way to be in the lunchroom, the way to act in the classroom, the way to be on the bus. We have behavioral expectations that children see, and our principals every day get on the intercom and say, okay, students, let's have a great day. Let's remember our school motto. And so we have these routines every day to teach behavioral expectations, but also to give students the sense of safety and security. They need the consistency. They need to know that every day, this is how my day is set up. And, you know, whether you realize it or not, parents are involved in that consistency at school. You know, I know my parents going to drop me off and they're going to let me walk into school by themselves. They know I can handle that on my own. And in the afternoon, if my parents picking me up, I know they're going to be there at a certain time. I know they're going to interact with my teachers as needed. But you help secure and support that consistency through being a parent and getting them to school on a regular basis. When you get home, you probably have in the evenings when school is in session, you probably have a routine. You should, you know, to help them get their homework done. But anyway, these routines I want you to think about. It establishes safety. Consistency, routines establishes safety. And that's important right now to our children. And so I want to say, you need to be willing to adapt and change not only your behavior, but the family rules and functions at home to adjust to this pandemic, to adjust to the changes and transitions, and to provide and meet the needs of your children. Okay, so be willing to ask yourself, do I have little habits that might actually be reflecting onto my children's behavior? Do I have a schedule at home that's increasing their feelings of safety? Can my child learn that if this happens, then this leads after that? You know, am I teaching them cause and effect? Am I teaching them that, you know, if you work hard, then you're going to be rewarded? And these are the things I want you to do. So I want you to just ask yourself, be willing to be open and ask yourself, are there things I need to do to change? In the changing and with children being home more, one thing you need to consider is reducing or restricting the ongoing exposure to news and media. There's a lot of stress in that right now. Is it important for your child to know all of that, especially depending on the age? And so I want you, and literally, if you're watching it, then just because you think your child's in their bedroom, children know everything that goes on in their home. And so just don't allow that to become the overall focus or factor that's going on in your home, what's going on in the news, because that is very stressful, okay? And so then I want to move on. I want to talk about setting up family routines. And I want to specifically talk about a lot of schoolwork routines to help you in this time, because again, setting up structure is going to improve the mental health and the coping of your child. And so I want you to think about one good thing about being able to come to school and then go home is that it allows us to compartmentalize our life. You know, I come to work and I do my work, and when 4:30 comes along, I leave and I go home. And then I assume my home life, which allows me to relax and to calm down, and I try to be very adamant about not interrupting those two things, not intermeshing those. And so that has been something that's good for our children. You know, my stressors at school, I'm there, I can leave them there and go home. I may have some homework, but I can get those done, but my overall school stress stays there. Well, now that school is at home and we've got kids sitting in front of Chromebooks and they're not able to separate those two lives, all of a sudden our world is just totally intermingled. And that intermingling causes stress. And so I want to give you an idea for parents as when it comes to school and virtual learning. I want to encourage you to allow your child to be able to compartmentalize his or her life. Have a designated space for schoolwork. Don't make it, if you can, don't make it the place where you all sit and eat supper together, if you can avoid that. Now, if you cannot, then I want you to literally be very conscious about it, and in the mornings, set schoolwork up on the table. But then when it's time for it to be over, shut the Chromebook down, put the books up, put them over in another area to where it's not a focus when school is over. Compartmentalization is very important because it allows us to move from different areas of our life. So to move from the stress of schoolwork to, whew, I'm at home now and I can relax. I can do something fun. And so I want to encourage you to find that specific work area and allow that to be separate from your home life, okay? I also want to encourage you to start setting up a schedule. And I encourage you to try to make it like they would be, make it like they're coming to school. We're going to get up at this time, we're going to eat our breakfast, and then schoolwork starts at this time. Now, our older children are being, they are having to follow schedules with virtual learning. They have to log in, but you be aware of those virtual schedules so that you're ensuring that they're doing that logging in. But I encourage you to set your work day up similar to a school day. Have your schedule, have designated breaks, and now it's lunchtime. And this afternoon, we're going to go and spend some time doing PE, and whether PE is inside, just doing some jumping jacks or doing some mindfulness activities, taking a break from school activity, and then coming back on. Try to set your day up on a really good schedule. With that being said, put your schedule, write it down on a board or on something that you can post up on your wall so that children see it. Think about the teacher. They have all kinds of things posted around their room. They have their schedule so that they're not having to say it every day. That's another tip I want to encourage you about being at home during transition time in any way, whether it's setting up a schedule or just expecting good behavior from your child. Remove as many verbal words as you can, okay? Make them written. State your expectations and don't use a lot of wording with it, okay? And so set your routine, put it on a cardboard sheet or whatever you've got, and every day for a little while refer, here's what we're doing, here's our schedule. And as they get used to that, the schedule will become routine for them and you're not going to have to remind them, okay? And so I encourage you, the fewer the words, the better. Another thing before I show you, I want to share with you, I don't want to run out of time, some tips. I encourage you to develop your own family motto, okay? At school, we have mottos, the way to be. And each school has, developed the bulldog behavior way to be or whatever. I encourage you, and you can get your kids on board with this. What can we make our motto this school year? If we're having to learn virtually, or even on top of that, if your child's back in school, we've had that shift back and forth. We don't know. We hope we get to stay in school the rest of the school year. Fingers crossed. But, having that, what is our family motto during the pandemic? And I have developed a new motto that I share over and over, and I'll repeat it again. But my motto in my office is, we are all doing the best we can, giving these times. And so come up with your motto at home so that you all share that. Develop family expectations and then teach those family expectations. Now, I've just kind of, went over that. And I want to say, before I move over to developing a good family plan for positive behavior at home, I want to say, while you're doing all of these plannings for virtual learning, I'm giving you these tips simply because, again, setting up the tone of your home will impact the mental health of your child, okay? And so I want to say, when you start to see disruption in behavior, re-ask yourself, what can I do differently? What might I need to tweak in my routine? Do expectations need to be different? Do I need to sit down and have a conversation with my child about what's going on? If you are concerned, you need, and this is where I've got down here, do not ignore signs and be prepared. You need to be willing to reach out to support that you have. And so with that, I want to say, be willing to contact the school. Guidance counselors are sitting there to help you. Call your school guidance counselor and say, I'm struggling with my child in this, and I'm worried. They will give you guidance. Your local family resource and youth service centers, they are there to help. And not only are they there to help with mental health, they are there to help with issues of maybe you need supplies to help you in your virtual learning. Maybe your family is struggling and need food assistance. Do not be ashamed of that. Reach out. Family resource and youth service centers in your schools are there to help for those very reasons. Reach out to mental health supports in your local community. And I will say your school guidance counselors and your family resource and youth service centers, if you contact them and are concerned about your child's mental health, they can give you suggestions of who works well with children and maybe those particular issues that you're seeing in your child. And they can even guide you in how to contact them and how to reach out to get them the help that they need. Okay, so I want to say, be prepared in the sense that be willing to look for support when you need it, okay? If things continue, even though you've made tweaks and they're getting severe, don't let them get to a point where they are very severe. Unfortunately, children die by suicide every day. Actually, every 1 hour and 48 minutes, a school-age youth dies by suicide. We want to avoid a child getting to that level. So be aware of that and seek out the supports that are there to help you meet your children's mental health needs. I am going, because I'm getting low on time, I want to share. Let me see if I can get this to come up. Let me see. I'm hoping it's coming up. There it is. I'm assuming you can still see my screen. So here is the family plan for positive behavior at home. And I want you to look at this. This is just a general routine, making a family schedule. And again, if you notice, and I said, put this up on the wall, get you a poster board or whatever, and determine what your family schedule is going to be. Then, on top of that, set some expectations, okay? Set expectations. In the morning, what are the things you want to see in your child? When it comes to physical, we want you to brush your teeth and eat a healthy breakfast. But when we're in a remote instruction, we want you to sit in your learning space, stay focused, do your best, ask for help, turn your work in, and move that on out. We want to be kind to others and kind in our home. So what are things that at home we have expectations for? We want you to talk kindly to each other. We want you to ask if you need help. We want you to be a responsible family member. And so I'm going to give you some chores to do throughout the day. So allow your expectations to include not only schoolwork, but also expectations of behavior. I've got a question. It says, it's really hard to manage the educational and emotional needs. What would you consider a successful day at home in a virtual learning environment? Wow, a successful day at home in a virtual learning environment to me would be seeing that your child is following a set routine, getting them focused on their schoolwork, assisting them as needed, but also, in our district, we have Chromebooks, so we have the ability for a child to access their teacher if needed, if they have questions, either by phone or through their Chromebook. But having your child set on that schedule, follow that schedule, and doing work from home, and being willing to recognize when they're struggling and asking for questions. from both you or, if need, from the school. School people are there to assist. And so maintaining that schedule through the day, seeing their actual work completed as it's expected, and then also, again, allowing your child to have break time. And it's when you say having a successful day, make sure the break times include not just hopping on your phone, you know, to game or watch YouTube videos, but taking some time and practicing some mindfulness techniques, or getting up and making a route through the house, or if it's warm enough, go outside and walk around the house for a few times, or, you know, take you some big deep breaths. Just allowing them to be able to have some natural breaks. And then again, once work is completed, shutting that down and allowing them to have time on their own to recoup and to de-stress. And so I'll look at what I would consider success is success in getting on a schedule and following a schedule, success in completing classwork and asking for help when needed, success in practicing ways of decompressing and calming our anxiety, and then also success in being able to say, okay, my schoolwork day is done. It is time to move to family life and social life and calming down. So that would be a successful day that I'm seeing. I want to move on to the second page here of this. And again, this is available to you to use. And so talks about ways to teach and encourage behaviors you want to see. And again, these are behaviors related to school, but also home life. Safety in homes and expectations in homes will help your child feel safe. So I'm just going to let you read that as you want to, and I just want to give this to you as a resource, because this is something that can be very, very helpful to you as a parent. Again, as a parent, seek out help when you need it. When you need help, turn to your guidance counselors, turn to your family resource and youth service centers, ask them for help and guidance, whether it be mental health issues or school issues. I want to get back to my PowerPoint for just a minute. I want to just say, again, as I've given you the PBIS.org as a resource, I want us to look back, and I want to just throw some questions out today for you to just, you know, think about based on my discussion today. You know, are you seeing behaviors in your child that could be related to COVID-19 impact? How severe are they? Are they things that if you just set up a structure, can that help them learn to cope? So literally, and that's the question, you consider your role and your behavior. Have you thought about how that plays and how your child manifests and copes with stress? Do you need to personally make changes in that interaction? Do you need to work on your stress and tension? And as you work on your stress and tension, can you include your child in that? Let's do some deep breathing together. Let's sit down and let's practice mindfulness techniques together. What changes or responses literally within your home environment might be needed to help improve your child's functioning? Routines, what routines do you need to set? In what ways does your home environment exude safety and consistency? That should be consistency. Understanding and caring, support and nurturance, so that your child faces, moves through, and comes out stronger after the COVID. What needs to improve? Okay. And I said, I've adopted the saying, we're all doing the best we can given these times. Let's do the best we can. And if we fall short, let's look for others for support and encouragement. We will all get through this. We just, as Governor Beshear says, we need to get through this together. So before I open up for questions, there is a couple more things that I do want to share with you. If I can close my PowerPoint here. Let me move this over. And one of these books I talked about to you, I want to start, let me go here. I want to start with this book, and I'm not trying to sell you anything on Amazon. This is just the best way I could get this up for you to see. This is a book that I have given as gifts to several of the parents that have brought children in that are suffering from a lot of anxiety right now. This book talks specifically about how anxious parents can impact and result in anxious kids. And so our goal is not to increase worry amongst our children, but to raise children who develop courage and independent behavior. And again, that is developed through a child having a healthy self-esteem and being encouraged to face their world with support and learn how to be empowered in the world. And so this is a really great resource for parents. I just want to encourage you on that and understand that this is a great read. Now, it may cause you to rethink how anxiety is developed in children, but it's a really good read and gives a lot of suggestions on how to help control anxiety in your children. Another thing, there is a coping skills for kids workbook. And this is a book that has, 4 different areas of helping children cope. And there's also coping skills for teens workbook that is the same thing, it's just for older children. And so in this is a great resource to find different ways of learning deep breathing. We talk about that. Or learning mindfulness techniques, whether it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, or it's using the alphabet and using each letter to state a name of an animal. You know, they've got all kinds of ideas in there. And those are things that you could throw in during a work day that a child could practice in between math and reading. You know, let's do some deep breathing. Let's do some mindfulness. Let's do a distraction to take anxiety off of our minds. This is another really great resource. I talked about taking arguing and verbal arguments and words out of it, because the more engaged we get into a verbal discussion with our children related to our expectations, then the more likely you're going to fail as an adult. Children always win. They're really good at arguing. And so this book right here, 1, 2, 3 for Magic, will teach you how to set up your environment to where we're not arguing. We're not going to get into a discussion about why you have to do this. And so 1, 2, 3 Magic is a great resource. A lot of our teachers in Pulaski County Schools use 1, 2, 3 Magic within their classroom so that arguments are not a point of their day. And so I encourage you to look at that. I also wanted to show you, let's see, I've got to figure out how to stop showing my screen. All right, I'm hoping you can see me now. Can you see me? All right, so I want to show you the last as we start to open up for questions. I'm hoping you can see me. This is a great book for younger children, okay? And this is specifically related to separation anxiety, okay? You can get this one also on Amazon, but I'm not telling you to buy it from there. It's just the quickest way that I get it. And this has been a gift that I have given several of my younger children that I've worked on. And so if you've got children, and I'm going to say when I say younger children, I'm using this one right now for a middle school age child. And every night, her parent, and they alternate, mom and dad alternate, read this book to her, so that she can feel comfortable sleeping by herself. She also struggles with getting out of the car, going to school every morning. And so I use this for older kids, and I know that sounds odd, but it's the idea that even when we're not together, there is an invisible string that links us that will keep you safe. So this is a great, great resource. Okay, so I've not got much time left, and I do have a question. 1, 2, 3 Magic Book, is it a good resource for older children or teenagers? Let me say, if you've got young children, get them started on 1, 2, 3 Magic, okay? And use it until they are out of your home. If you're just now starting it, start it with your older children. It's okay. Let them know what you're going to do, and it will tell you how to set up the routine, and let them know, you know, when I say 1, this is what it means, and that's all I'm going to say. And so you can use it with older children or teenagers, and actually a lot of times your older children initially understands it better. Always remember, when you start a new task or a new behavioral task, your child will rise to the occasion and will test you to see if you're going to stick with it. So just remember, when you add something new, it will get worse first before it gets better. You have to be consistent and you don't need to give in, okay? So anyway, I've run out of time and I just want to say thank you for listening. I'm here. I've given you my contact information. Contact me if you need me, okay? We're all going to get through this.